I'm pregnant and my baby daddy wants to return to his wife. They are attempting to turn this into a surrogacy arrangement and take the child away from me. I, 29F, dated a guy named Joe, 30M, for 3 months before he left me to return to his ex, Kim. I discovered I was pregnant shortly after we broke up and I am currently 24 weeks along. I told him, and he was ecstatic. It turned out that his fiancée had fertility concerns and would probably never be able to conceive naturally, and he had always wanted to be a father. Getting back together was out of the question for both of us, so he remains with his girlfriend. Joe was only allowed to the first appointment because to COVID-19, and we discovered I was expecting twins. According to Joe, when he told Kim about her infertility, she had a mental breakdown and asked to speak with me. I met them at their residence, and Kim expressed her want to be engaged in my pregnancy because she would eventually become the children's stepmother. She began telling me that I needed to have a home birth, that I needed to formula feed so that they could keep the babies for half of the week, that she wanted 1 boy and 1 girl, and that the children should call her Mama because they would call me Mommy. I shut her down and told her that I would make the greatest decisions for my children and my body before leaving. Kim remained intrusive, calling me every day about my eating and exercise habits and talking about how her employer wouldn't allow her take maternity leave. She attended the virtual genetics counseling appointment instead of Joe and took over the entire conversation, attempting to discuss her family history, which was irrelevant. When it came time for my 20-week level 2 scan, they permitted me 1 guest, and Joe recommended I bring Kim instead of him, which I refused. Joe did come and find out the gender, which I intended to keep a surprise for myself so we could have a gender reveal party. I announced my pregnancy on social media, and she responded by announcing that they were having twins in a non-traditional method and that she felt blessed. I was irritated, but kept my mouth shut. Then she hosted a gender reveal party and shared it on social media. I was not even invited. She also stated that she is throwing a baby shower. I responded on her posts, telling her to stop treating me like a surrogate, that the children were not hers, and that Joe had no claim or custody over them until they were born. I immediately called Joe and reaffirmed everything, telling him that I would not see either of them until we went to family court, and that my mother would be my birth partner. He and Kim, along with some of her friends and relatives, are calling me an asshole, and her mother even called and asked I give her one of my babies, as if this were the Parent Trap. So, AITA. Edit. I'm absolutely hiring a lawyer right away. You have terrified the snot out of me, but I am glad you did. Update. I never considered the possibility that this was done on purpose. We used condoms because I don't respond well to hormonal birth control, and had to wait for a non-hormonal IUD due to other medical difficulties. I went to the police on Thursday after posting this, and they told me there was nothing they could do because no crime had occurred. In my state, orders of protection can be criminal or family-based, so I was able to obtain one against Joe. On Friday, I hired a lawyer who informed me that in my state, there was nothing I could do about custody until the babies were delivered, so I'll be leaving my state soon to ensure that it's not my baby's home state and that I'm not charged with anything. However, someone forwarded this article to Kim, who came to my workplace, destroyed my car, and broke several office windows. I deal with children, so she was arrested for not only criminal damage and trespassing, but also child endangerment. So, ideally, this works in my advantage. Also, if Joe did it on purpose, I doubt Kim knew because she was screaming at me about how I stole her life and everything I owned was supposed to be hers. New small update. I have orders of protection against Kim and Joe. I left the state nevertheless, and Joe and Kim began pestering again because there is no legal jurisdiction once you leave the state. But I have enough evidence to bring charges in my current state as well, and I will seek a restraining order. Story 2. I found out why my husband's parents divorced, but I can't tell him because it includes his father's secret fetish. My mother-in-law is here on a visit, and when my 32F husband, 32M, was running an errand, I asked her why she and his father separated. They bought a house right before the recession, and I always assumed the stress was pulling them apart. But what she told me, truly insane. This is a long... She responds, well, it was a lot of things and secrets that were kept for, including the weird fetishes. I sarcastically said, oh, haha, you mean butt stuff? She replied, well, that and the women's clothing. She goes on to tell me this story. The night before their wedding, they were getting close. She reached down, felt the lacy women's underwear. She was stunned and inquired what was going on because she assumed it was a prank. They had been together for a while, but this had never happened. He simply replied that he felt it could turn her on, and that was fast forward to my husband in primary, working on a school project. He needed to print something, so my MIL brought out the family laptop. When she opened it, she discovered photos of the room with MIL. She questioned him, and he explained that it was he had attended a conference on his life. She clearly didn't believe him, but they had just invested their life wealth in this mansion. Not long after, when cleaning their bedroom closet, she came across the package she didn't recognize. That box contained photographs of Phil dressed in women's clothing, including some of him in her clothes. She questioned him about it, and he promised it would never happen again. My Sil and Bill discovered him in women's clothing in their backyard one morning and said, "We don't have to tell Mommy about this, right?" They didn't tell Mommy until they were teenagers. Throughout this time, she would see him at Kroger, by the dumpsters, throwing things out. In addition, he possessed a burner phone. She never went dumpster diving, but when she tried to talk to him about it, things turned nasty. This eventually led to him leaving the house for extended periods of time, including overnight stays. She had to tell him several times that she didn't care what he did, but he couldn't simply walk away from his children's life. Her friend and her husband were close to them, and the husband and Phil met one day to discuss privately. He informed him, "I just don't want the responsibility anymore." My mother-in-law, who was upset and in need of a distraction, brought her and the kids to California to visit family. When she returned home, all of the trash had been removed save for a single piece of paper with a schedule on it, a day plan for what she imagined was a date. She checked their shared bank account. It was totally deserted. He had been using their joint debit card to go on dates with ladies. When she found out, she asked that he give her the debit card and open his own bank account. When he refused, she took the family laptop, and he freaked out. Fearing this, she dashed into the neighbor's house with the children and the phone. Not long later, they divorced. He didn't want much custody of the kids, so she had to persuade him to do at least one weekend every month. He remarried and divorced exactly 5 years later. In a similar cheating circumstance, she discovered him sending emails about how he did not want to go home to his then wife. Now he's ready to marry someone younger than my husband and me, which means I've dated men who are older than her. Phil has recently become very demanding of my husband regarding the wedding, a destination wedding that requires a 3-day drive. He demands that we accompany our 12-year-old kid and pay our own way. Despite her younger age, his current fiancé has a superiority complex over us. There is a worrisome amount of PDA, and I believe she contributes to the violence he has recently shown against my husband. We've reached the stage where family, including Mael, is calling and texting us about how upset Phil would be if his son does not attend the wedding, attempting to pressure us into going, despite the fact that my husband does not want to go, and we simply cannot afford it because I was recently laid off and we have a mortgage. This marks his 4th wedding. He insists on staying at the after-party house with our child and strangers, but I don't trust him. Nobody is anxious that he will have more children in his old age. No one is worried about the trauma my husband went through, and no one recognizes the connection to why he doesn't want to attend the wedding. I am not sure if his fiancé is aware of the cross-dressing. I don't think it's my place to tell my husband about this, but I feel like he should understand why. I never want our son to spend the night near him. It's not just the women's clothing, but the secrets he concealed and the fact that we're not sure what more he's hiding.